Okay, so for the answer to this one, you will look at the answer key after you submit your evidence of engaging with this video. We're going to focus on this one. So you know the drill. Go ahead and try to apply content principle 2, eliminating excess verbiage. Look at your notes. You're still learning, so look at your notes. What kinds of things are you supposed to eliminate? One warning I do want to give you is that sometimes students go crazy with the elimination and they take out too much. You are not rewriting the sentences. You can correct minor typos. You are not paraphrasing. None of the examples paraphrase. You can only correct minor typos and make minor adjustments in syntax if you have to cross out excess verbiage. But don't go crazy with it. Always look to these 10 arguments as examples of how and to what extent you cross out something considered excess verbiage. Okay, so I'm going to assume that you have tried on your own to apply content principle 2 of clarifying arguments. Let's go ahead and go over the answer. Not a statement, cross it out. Let's look for any assurances or hedges in the statement. Notice that the word think often functions as a hedge, but in the context of this sentence, this is why it always matters that you pay attention to context whenever somebody makes a claim, states a belief, uses a word, presents a point of view. What is the context of think? They're talking about something that people do. They think and talk. So think is not functioning as a hedge here. Think might be a typical hedge indicator, but you have to use context in making a final decision about that. So you wouldn't cross out think here. So if people were able to think and talk rationally about controversial topics like we just did, there should be a comma. We're going to want to make the what that's implied here explicit, the then, but we don't need to do that here. Okay, so there's nothing to get rid of here. If America was this kind of nation, then this would definitely be a contribution to making American society better. Then we're going to get rid of definitely, because that's more like an assurance, stating a lot of confidence in the middle of a statement. So do you see how you could have one tiny word be excess verbiage in the form of assuring or hedging in the middle of a statement? That's when you want to slow down, be attentive and careful. Notice that this is not in brackets. What I'm trying to say is this. What I'm getting at is oh, you know what? I missed that. What I'm trying to say is this. What I'm getting at is captured by the following. So notice that even I can make mistakes like this. So I should have said that this is what? Statement 3. And this is what? Statement 4. I must have been tired. I did all of the videos, the first set of videos in one session, which goes towards intellectual humility. I'm admitting that I made a mistake, but I'm also showing how important it is to be cognizant of your brain. Your brain does get tired when you have a big cognitive load. Sometimes it's better to give yourself a chance to sleep, give your brain a chance to rest, eat some protein, because your brain doesn't function right if it's tired, if it's depleted of its glucose stores. And that is probably what happened to me by the time I got to this. I did all of the videos for all of task 1 of this week, and my brain just got depleted. So, not making excuses, I'm explaining. So that was statement 4, self-corrected. But we still, even though we should have bracketed and numbered this, we cross it out because the entire thing is a conclusion indicator. If people were able to think and talk rationally about such topics like we have, then America would be better off for it. Okay, so in 3 seconds, so there's nothing to cross out there. So at this point, I want you to try and reformat it on your own and employ a uniform language. So how did that go? Does your hand hurt after writing out all the statements and employing uniform language? Mine does. Some of you might be like, oh, this is so tedious. I have to slow down. It takes up time. Yes, it does. In philosophy, we slow down to take great intellectual care, to be very attentive. Look, when we're dealing with controversial topics, when we're dealing with important issues, we need to slow down and think about what we're saying. We need to slow down and be intellectually perseverant and intellectually patient, intellectually focused to make sure that we really do understand where someone's reasoning is, what it's about, where they're coming from. Like I said, if you don't do that, then it doesn't seem fair to judge someone that you haven't tried to understand in terms of their conceptual framework and their logic. Okay, so let's go ahead and go over the answer. So as you can see, we got rid of excess verbiage. Did I leave out a premise? No. Okay. So as you can see, statement 1 happens to be premise 1 here. If people were able to think and talk rationally about controversial topics like we just did, I made the then explicit in the conditional. The United States would be a nation of civilized people. Some of you might be tempted to take out like we just did, but the reason why I left it in is because they are using themselves as an example. They're saying, look at this. This is evidence of what people can do when they talk in a certain way. So that is why I left this in here. If you had taken it out, I would have been okay. There is some wiggle room when it comes to content principle 2 and 3. And so I would have been okay with you taking this out, but I gave you my reason for keeping it in. Now let's look at premise 2. So premise 2 says, if America was this kind of nation, what do they mean by this kind of nation? What are they referring back to? Well, a nation where what? People think and talk rationally about controversial topics. That's what they mean by this kind of nation. Notice here, America is used instead of the United States, right? So what I did here then is I used the word United States for uniform language. Right? Okay, yeah. Because we already have what? We have United States right here, so then that adds logical flow. The logic is more transparent. And then instead of saying if America or the United States was a nation like this, or this kind of nation, we employed uniform language. Was a nation of civilized people. And I think I made a mistake. So when I was saying, I said, if America was this kind of nation, I said that it was referring back to this. But now that I'm doing my slow thinking, I realize that's not what's being referred to here. What they're saying is they're making a flow. They're saying if X, then Y. And they're saying, and if Y was the case, so I was wrong. So if America was this kind of nation, in other words, what follows? If one is true, given the then part, and that's true, what kind of nation? A nation of civilized people. I did not use the keywords. I was not myself attentive enough and careful enough. What kind of nation? Well, here's what they say, right? Nation of. Do you see how I did not express full intellectual carefulness and attention? And I didn't catch that until I got down here, which is interesting because when I reformatted the argument, I was intellectually careful and attentive. I did use the correct uniform language. I did refer back to this part of the first statement. Okay, so interesting. So notice that I'm admitting my mistakes and I'm letting you know that I've made them. I didn't make it here, but I made it when I went back to the video to explain things. So when they say this kind of nation, they mean a nation of civilized people. So that's what I have here. A nation of civilized people replaces the kind of nation. The United States here replaces the word America. Then this would be a contribution to making American society better. Now, I did not change this to United States. Why? Because when we talk about society, we tend to use the name America to describe U.S. society. So I left it as American society. It would sound weird to say to making United States society better. So when we talk about the society of the United States, we use the word American when we want to describe which society we're talking about to refer to the society of the United States better. You can see that I left out the assurance. If people were able to think and talk rationally about controversial topics like we just did, so where's the conclusion? If people were able to think and talk, did I switch that around? No. Rationally, and then it says what? About such topics like we have. Okay, notice I employ uniform language here. About such topics turns to think and talk, and I left out the word, to talk rationally about. They've got talk rationally, so I've got talk rationally about such topics. Which topics are they referring back to? Where does the word topics get mentioned previously in the argument? Up here. Topics, like we just did. Okay, so it doesn't say what the topic is, so we still have about, but we can go up here, right? Controversial topics. So this is basically, this if part is repeating what this says. But the statement itself is a new statement. It's not exactly the same statement as over here. It's only the first part. So if people were able to think and talk rationally about such topics like we did, well, what do they mean by like we did? Well, how did we talk about them? What does it mean like rationally about which topics? Such topics, what do they mean, such topics? Controversial topics. So that's why I employed uniform language here. If people were able to think and talk rationally about what kind of topics? Controversial topics. So that's where I employed uniform language. So really, I shouldn't have highlighted this part. I should have highlighted this part, such topics. If people were able to think and talk rationally, we've got that. About, we've got that. Such topics, such, we had to go back up in here and say, well, what kind of topics? Controversial topics. So that goes back into, actually, so this was in here, but then we are linking it to what's in here. Okay, controversial topics like we just did. Then this would be a contribution to making American society better again. This says it in a different way. Then America would be better off for it. This basically says the same thing as this, but which wording is more precise? Saying America would be better off for it? Well, how would America be better off for it? We might understand this in context of the paragraph, but we are applying uniform language to make the logic super transparent. So in what way would America be better off for it? We go back to look for a clue in the previous statements, and we realize that they are talking about what? In the sense of making American society better. So we basically took this right here, then America would be better off for it, and we used uniform language per a previous version of that same point earlier. So that goes to right here. So you can see that there were several instances where I deployed uniform language. Take a look and see how when we use uniform language, we make the logic of the argument just that much more explicit. By the way, the logic of this argument is like this. If X, then Y. Premise 2, if Y, this looks like an X, then Z, conclusion. If X, then Z. Notice, it goes from if X, then Y to if X, then Z. So some people think, isn't it just repeating itself over and over again? No, because these are all hypotheticals, and each hypothetical is unique. This one has topic X and Y in it. This one does have Y, but it connects it hypothetically to something about topic Z or belief Z. So they don't say exactly the same thing. And this doesn't say exactly the same thing as this in the sense that this is now being used to say that if this is true, then something else must be true. Same thing here. Okay, I think that's all we've got for right now. Okay, thank you.